Despite fossil fuel companies making billions in profits, the Tories have so far resisted instituting a windfall tax on energy firms. But the policy, which was first promoted by Labour, is popular with voters, and as energy prices continue to surge, it's getting ever more urgent. It's all a context in which Ed Miliband can smell a U-turn.
Amidst the chaos and confusion about what their position is, I think a massive U-turn is lumbering slowly over the hill. But I say this to the Chancellor: swallow your pride and get on with it. Because every day he delays is another day when the British people are denied the help they need. Millions of families having sleepless nights because the Chancellor won't act. What is he waiting for? He should come to the House, as proposed by my right honourable friend, the Shadow Chancellor, with an emergency budget for a windfall tax, getting rid of VAT on energy bills, an increase in the Warm Homes discount to £400, an emergency plan to insulate 2 million homes this year, and a cut in business rates. And their position on the windfall tax, Madam Deputy Speaker, is part of I won't for a moment. And their position on the windfall tax is part of a wider problem with this Chancellor and this government. Just look at the political choices he is making. He leaves non-doms shielding their millions, while millions of families and pensioners face a cut in their incomes. He whacks up taxes on tenants and lets landlords off the hook. He makes young people at work pay more, but those getting money from capital gains pay not a penny extra. Wrong, unfair, unjust, out of touch. That's who he is.
That was a very good summary of Tory priorities. Lots of reference to the fact that national insurance rises only affect those who make their incomes from work. Of course, if Sunak had instead increased income tax, that would have hit landlords as well as workers, but he didn't. And in fact, he wants to cut it. I wonder why. We'll show you some more of that speech now. Miliband goes on to attack the Tories for always blaming others for their own mistakes.
Being this government, they always try and blame someone else. We heard it earlier on. In just the last few days alone, Madam Deputy Speaker, here is the roll call of people the party opposite are trying to frame. I have to say, it's hard to keep track. The Bank of England, civil servants working from home, shamefully, the British people being unable to cook properly, apparently the cause of food banks. Yesterday, a ludicrous suggestion for one of these ministers, people not working enough hours. And the Chancellor of all people, is at it too. Who does he blame for the massive cut to benefits? He blames the IT system. The dude from Silicon Valley. Madam Deputy Speaker, who is he trying to kid? If he had got his act together early enough, of course he could have raised benefits properly. Indeed, the thing I don't get is this. He found it perfectly possible to cut universal credit by £20 in the middle of the year in September. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's not a case of computer says no, it's a case of Chancellor says no. It's not the case of a computer system not being up to it, it's the Chancellor not being up to it. Mr. Speaker, the story of the last few months, crypto has crashed and so has the Chancellor. And how similar they are. The Chancellor and cryptocurrency came out of nowhere. The value surged, looked like the future, but it's all turned out to be one giant Ponzi scheme.
So lots of those terrible excuses that he ran through, we've shown you on recent episodes of Tisky Sour. One of the most recent was the reference to Rishi Sunak there, where he said, the reason we can't raise benefits in line with inflation is because our computer system can't handle doing it more than once a year. And then he's making that pun about him being a Silicon Valley dude, because Rishi Sunak seems to always want to spend time in California instead of in Westminster. I think he's probably given up on getting promoted in Westminster, so he's sort of given up on politics. Moya, what did you make of those interventions from a very fiery Ed Miliband?
I am impressed that despite the economic shortage, someone managed to find 50p and stick it in Ed Miliband. That was, he was animated. I was actually really impressed, especially with the crypto little dig there. The metaphor was correct, let's just put it that way, and well in keeping with the one that he'd done as a through line. But he's right. Essentially what he's saying about Rishi Sunak is that he's not up to the task, and he's not, because Rishi Sunak is one of the most dangerous people of all, in that he is a committed ideologue when it comes to Thatcherism. And he is determined to prove that his view of the economic model he thinks the country should be following, which is the one pioneered by Thatcher back in the 70s, will work. And all we have to do is just stick with it. Well, I'm not an economist, but I'm telling you, it's not going to work. It's not working right now. And by the time it becomes apparent that Rishi Sunak's position is completely untenable because of the misery he has wrought on the country, then there will be thousands or millions who've been pushed further into poverty, and it will take them absolutely years and years and years to get out of that if they can. If Rishi Sunak is left in his position, we're going to be subject to a lot more hardship before we see any signs of it getting better. And meanwhile, he's pushing this idea of, telling businesses that he's going to cut rates in order to make them invest in training more, hiring more. Well, we've got the tightest labor market we've seen in ages. So I don't really know how that works. It's classic sort of like, paternalistic economics. And it hasn't worked. But again, he's still trying it. And that's what's dangerous about Rishi Sunak.
One, it's ridiculous to say, oh, we'll cut their corporation tax so they invest more. Like, we've seen them make that argument again about BP and Shell. BP and Shell have said, actually, their investment plans wouldn't change if there was a windfall tax. But maybe, they didn't exactly say this, but you can see this from what they have chosen to do with their supernormal profits, is they have bought back shares, which just increases the value of the company for shareholders, and they've given out bigger dividends. So you cut the taxes of corporations, that goes to shareholders, right? It doesn't have anything to do with training, has very, very little to do with investment. What that will do is just trickle up to the super rich. What people need is a pay rise, right? So we don't need people pretending that a company who makes enormous profits that they don't need or they don't deserve is going to decide, oh, we've got so much money to spare, let's train the workers. That's not how it works. But obviously Rishi Sunak is willing to pretend that's how it works because, as you explained very articulately, Moya, he is a committed Thatcherite and a very dangerous one as well. Thank God he turned out to be a Ponzi scheme, and people have realised before he got that top job. All of us here at Novara Media are working harder than ever to keep scrutinising establishment politicians and the media barons who protect them. We don't have billionaire funders. We don't have advertising partnerships. We're funded entirely by you. If you've ever thought about supporting us, now's the time to go to novaramedia.com/support and donate anything you can from just £1 per month. Defy the corporate media. Join our monthly supporters and help build our supporter base to 10,000 strong.